Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andrew Ibarra, and I quickly want to put together this video just to showcase the upcoming mandatory Azure policy assignments that will be rolling out to everybody's tenants here in the not so distant future. Now, it's been pretty well known that Microsoft has been trying to enforce mandatory multi-factor authentication for the most part going into 2025, starting in 2024. It's been enforcing MFA for Azure sign-in attempts. So if you're familiar with conditional access policies and Entra ID, there's been Microsoft managed conditional access policies rolling out to Azure tenants, enforcing whenever people sign into the Azure portal or maybe to Intune or different applications, that multi-factor is guaranteed with the sign-in attempts. However, now going into phase 2, according to the documentation starting October 1st, MFA enforcement will gradually begin for accounts that sign into the Azure CLI, Azure PowerShell, mobile apps, IEC tools, REST API endpoints to perform any create, update, or delete operations. Read operations won't require MFA. So this means any user accounts that's found trying to create an Azure resource, delete, or an update an Azure resource would now be held accountable for that MFA being enforced on that account. So when it comes to impact, some customers may use a user account in Microsoft Entra ID as a service account, and it's recommended to migrate these user-based service accounts to secure cloud-based service accounts with workload identities. Essentially, if you have some type of automation job or pipeline that's using a user account to make changes to your Azure infrastructure or resources, this is where the true impact will lay. You will come across downtime and breaking of those automation jobs if they're using a user account as a service account and that user account doesn't have MFA. So jumping into how exactly is this being implemented, because phase 1, again, was conditional access policy. Phase 2 doesn't necessarily say it's an Azure policy in this Learn documentation. However, in this blog post that's linked here, we can see the same information, right? Starting October 2025, same one, phase 1 and phase 2. But here it explicitly says phase 2 enforcement will be gradually applied across Azure tenants through Azure policy, following Microsoft safe deployment practices. So what are these Azure policies that are going to be mandating and enforcing multi-factor authentication? If we go to my personal tenant right now, just to kind of showcase how it's going to be rolled out and what the policies are, I cleaned out all my policy assignments, so I don't have any assignments currently deployed at anywhere inside of my tenant. However, I do have these MFA policies already assigned to my tenant, and I can see that by going to the Resource Graph Explorer and running this quick query to return all policy assignments that exist inside of my tenant. And what you will see is there's two policy assignments that it did find. There's a system.mfa delete and a system.mfa write. So what does this mean? It means that there's two assignments that are assigned to my tenant. It's in enforcement mode. It's blocking user accounts that don't have MFA when it comes to deleting, updating, or writing to my Azure resources. But I cannot see these policies in the UI for Azure policy. This is the first that Microsoft has been rolling something like this out, especially when it comes to Azure policy. So regarding impact, when it comes time for these policies rolling out to different tenants, you will not be able to see these policy assignments. You will not be able to delete them, modify them. More importantly, you won't be able to make an exemption for them because they're existing kind of in the back end. As far as how EPAC is handling this, we use the Resource Graph Explorer to see this. So we're going to be capturing it through EPAC starting in v11.0.9. I'll jump to that here shortly. But let's get to what we were looking for, right? How do we actually want to get ahead of the curve and assign these policies ourselves into our tenants, maybe in audit mode, to capture some logs or some events and see if there actually are any user accounts without MFA? So these two policies are actually already inside of everybody's tenants. So they've already been rolled out as built-in definitions. Today you can find them by searching multi-factor in the definitions pane here. It's going to be both of these. Users must authenticate with multi-factor authentication to create or update resources, as well as delete resources. So we can take these policies, we can manually deploy them or put them in EPAC and roll them out and assign them to our tenant to start capturing some compliance data. And believe it or not, there's actually documentation that's published through the product team on how to apply for MFA self-enforcement through Azure policy that will take you through the steps manually finding these exact two policies that I just showed and walking you through assigning them to your tenant. However, us being EPAC, we already went ahead and created an examples folder on our GitHub site. If you were to go into the MFA folder, there's going to be a policy set definition template that will automatically group those two policy assignments here for you. So this one's the delete and this one's the create and update. Put them into a policy set called MFA, Enforce MFA for Azure Resources. And there's also a policy assignment template that'll take that exact policy set and then assign it to whatever scope you want inside of your environment. So to just quickly showcase how easy it is using EPAC, I'm going to open up my EPAC folder structure. It's brand new. I don't really have anything in here. I'm going to put a new file here for policy sets, name it mfa.jsonc, and paste the contents here. Everything is in audit mode already, so no real need to change any values here unless you want to go ahead and roll out into enforcement. But for the most part, we can just keep it here. So I'm going to save it and close this. And then I'm also going to grab the assignment template and create a new file inside of policy assignments. And the only thing that we do need to change regarding this file is we do need to update the scope for the pack selector and the ID of the management group or the subscription that we want to assign this to. So I pasted the content from the policy assignment here, and I replaced the tenant for my pack selector, which matches mine, as well as the ID of the management group I want to assign this policy to. And that's it. So we're going to go ahead and save this, close it, and then we're going to run the step to build the deployment plan, find out what the delta is, and then assign this policy to our tenant. All right, so it was able to successfully complete, showcasing that there's a new policy assignment and a policy set, which is expected with the new MFA policies. But what I do want to call out, as mentioned, starting in 11.0.9 of EPAC, we are capturing Microsoft managed Azure policy assignments that exist inside of your tenant. So if you're willing to update to v11.0.9, running this would at least give some type of indicator to see is it set to 2, meaning you have both those MFA policies already assigned to your tenant, or if it's 0, that's a good way of knowing that it's not yet assigned to your tenant. So let's go ahead and deploy the policy plan and get these assignments and the policy sets out to our tenant. Looks like that went through successfully. And if we go to assignments, we can see that the MFA, Enforce MFA for Azure Resources, is now live and assigned to my tenant. So just for some clarification, the self-enforce MFA policies, us doing this, you can see it through the UI, the Azure Policy portal. The ones that are mandated and rolled out through Microsoft, those ones you won't be able to see unless you go through the Resource Graph Explorer to see it in the back end. The last thing I want to mention is for compliance right now, going into what is compliant as far as user accounts making changes to my Azure resources that don't have MFA enabled. The compliance pane here isn't going to be as helpful as most Azure policy assignments because there's not a persistent resource that exists inside of our Azure tenant that it's constantly checking for compliance against. Rather, this is going to say 100% compliant the entire time because there's no actual resource. Rather, we're going to be looking at event logs that are going to be captured for any audit capabilities or any audit findings that it does find against the specific policy. And going back to the self-enforce MFA documentation, we're going to scroll down about 3/4 away. There's going to be an audit mode section that says, discover audit events in your activity log for this policy assignment is applied in audit mode. Each event represents a resource create, update, or delete that was performed by a user who did not authenticate with MFA. And it does give a quick snippet here of a query that you can use to see if there is actually any events that were found for a user that's doing any changes without MFA. So hopefully this helps. What I'm hoping is you can quickly use the templates just to put them inside of your EPAC folder structure and quickly deploy them, and then use both of these articles, or particularly this article, to start capturing some of those events if they are found. I'll go ahead and put all the documentation I was referencing and a quick link to our examples folder for the MFA and everything else that I used in this video down in the description down below. If I did miss anything or any additional insight or questions you have, please feel free to leave any comments in the comments down below. And if not, look forward to seeing you on the upcoming videos for EPAC.